Seskéha, 6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Can we start with the opening, please? Okay, so council attendance. Chief Teresa Jacobs is out, Brady, and you have Chief Cindy Francis Mucho, who was in the family matter, which now we're going to lead into our moment of silence, and we'd like to send all of our strength and prayers and hopes to the families. Everyone who's lost someone or who are going through difficult times. So with that, we're going to take 30 seconds out of our time to show some respect. And that 30 seconds starts now. Okay, now. Okay, council agenda acceptance. We have rules of order. We have action items. We have our updates. We have presentation, business from the floor, one resolution, announcement, and adjournment. Any additions or deletions or adjustments to the agenda? Chief Master Adams?
Yes, I'd like to move one item that would be in business group 4 up to just before actually, so our next item, and that would be a petition that will be presented for the hospice. And that would be by Chris Francis. So after we're done accepting the agenda, I would like only the rules of order. I would like the petition. And the chair. At the same time. Thank you.
Okay, so we just have one item from discussion. Okay. Do we have any first? Chief Vanessa move and just second. Chief Bishop, second. Discussion. Question and call. All in favor, please raise your hand. And record show carried. So, rules of order. Okay, we have a couple of things here. So we're going to start with one. We're going to mention that there's a new sign at the door where it's filming in progress. That's we're going to have a lot more of that in all of our meetings. Let everyone know that everyone is being recorded when you enter into this room. There really is no privacy. This is a public forum, a public space, and with that, you will be and can be recorded. So we're just letting you just see a little sign right up earlier in the law, you're gonna see more of those postings. Again, we're trying to be transparent. So with that being said, if you are talking, you have the mic, can you please talk loud inside the mic so everyone at home can hear via Zoom. General meeting rules of order. The general meeting are to occur the last Thursday of each month and will occur in each district on a rotating basis and Kawehno, not doing this night. The exception to this is when the general meeting cancellation protocol, MCR 2015/2016, hashtag 260 in the unfortunate circumstance where community member passes among the three districts, the meeting will occur as regularly scheduled in the other two districts where the member did not reside, and the silence will also be taken in their memory. The general meetings are an opportunity for council members to hear information from council and assist council with issues that affect the community. The following general meeting rules were originally developed at community general meeting in July 2006. The principle for general meeting rules is based on respect for each other, and all attendees are expected to behave respectfully and professionally at all times. General meeting rules. 1. Meetings will start at 6 p.m. and proceed to a maximum of 8 p.m., at which point the community asks if they choose to continue past 8 p.m. 2. Personal issues will not be dealt with in a public forum/general meeting. Personal items can be dealt with on an individual basis with council members or by appointment in the Mohawk office. 3. Have questions or comments during the meeting, raise your hand to be acknowledged by the chairperson. The chairperson will keep note of the order the community members indicate to be acknowledged. 4. Please speak to questions and comments relevant to the point of order within the agenda and be constructive on use. 5. A list will be made of issues in which to address the council, and if the answers cannot be provided at the current meeting, the issue will be taken back to council table for further discussion and follow-up. I'd also like to refer back to the council meeting procedure regulations. And with this, I'd like to focus on section 9, chairperson. 9.1, the grand chief is the chairperson of council meetings, general meetings, special general meetings, and emergency meetings, unless otherwise provided. Section 9.7, the chairperson shall read out the prepared agenda and after a mover or seconder to accept the agenda. The acceptance of the agenda shall be voted on by the council. Once accepted, the agenda shall be followed for the duration of the meeting. 9.8, the chairperson is responsible to A, facilitate the meeting by following the order of business indicated by the agenda. B, ensure that the meeting runs smoothly and fairly by maintaining order. 3, remain impartial during debates. D, maintaining the speakers list to allow for discussion in an orderly manner. E, allow speakers to be placed on the list who have not yet spoken before those who already have spoken in the debate. And F, make decisions on points of order and points of privilege raised by the district chiefs during the meeting. Section 10, taking care of business. In order to address the council member wishing to speak shall raise their hand to be recognized by the chair. Section 10.17, at any time during the debate, a motion or resolution, a council member may raise a point of information by asking a question of the sponsoring chiefs in order to obtain clarification, receive further details, or otherwise make a more informed decision on the issue being considered. This point of information must be raised in the form of a question. 10.19, at any time during the meeting, a council member may raise a point of order if they feel that rules of order are being broken, and the council member must state what rule has been broken or not enforced by the chairperson. 10.20, the chairperson shall immediately make a decision on the point of order issue raised. 10.21, at any time during the meeting, the council member may raise a point of privilege. If they feel that their rights of privilege have been infringed upon, they must state the issue. A point of privilege refers to anything regarding the comfort of the council member, i.e. too much noise, inability to hear the speaker, the room is too hot or too cold, the council member is unable to hear the matter of procedure, or to the right of the council member not to be insulted, misquoted, or deliberately misinterpreted. 10.22, the chairperson shall immediately make a decision on the point of privilege issue raised. 10.23, any district chief may immediately appeal the decision rendered by the chairperson pursuant to section 10.20, 10.22. Appeals of this nature shall immediately be decided by debate, without debate, by the vote of the council members present and in time to vote. So that's something a little bit new. We're going to be updating these meetings. And we're going to be working on these. We'll have something presented for consultation at the next general meeting. So those are our rules of order. Now going back to our agenda, we had allowed for a change of the agenda, and we're allowing a community member to come and present for council. So we can call the community member up at this time. watch the tables, just be careful.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
I have a petition here that I would like council to look at, so I have over 800 names. I want to get a hospice here on the reserve. My mother was dying, and Diane Leeds came and spoke to me about her back in dying program that she does. And from there, I took up, I was saying, like, jeepers, we don't have hospice, we don't have it, we don't have the room. Some people don't have the room. I had my mother at home. I had her in my living room. My living room was really large, so I was able to take care of her. I took time off to look after her. So I had all of home care in there, PSWs, the nurses looking after my mother. So I thought, why can't we have hospice? Why can't we have home care involved in that building so that something happens in the middle of the night? Somebody wants to come home to die. They don't have a home care. They could hospice. And the people working there, they were just like family to my mother. So this is where I'm at. I'm lost for words because I'm looking at the clock and I have prayers for my mother right now. So I'm hoping and I'm praying that you guys and gals will bring hospice something on the water. If Mohawk also has land anywhere on the water, that it would be so spiritual, it would be, the family could be there with them together. And the employees of home care would be there too.
I'm going to say, I thank you for your efforts. I thank you for this. I think this is probably the first petition I'm happy to receive. I commend you for the work, the dedication to this, and to help our families. You know, we all experience this. We've all gone through this, and I think you found a solution, a gap, a need for us. And I am just so honored to accept this. You know, for the record, I do have this. What's your first and last name?
Christine Francis.
Christine Francis.
Yes.
So for the record, I have the petition from Christine Francis with approximately 800 signatures.
Over 800.
Over 800 signatures, petition to establish a hospice care facility in Akwesasne. Now,
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much.
Careful.
was it? Really? Wow. Okay, now see people, that's how you submit a petition. Just talk, we talk. Okay, so with rules of order, let's go into our action items. We have, let's check what we have here on our list. Okay, our first one, we had action item. What is the timeline for completion of the Akwesasne election law AEL justice portfolio? We have completed December/January. So that's the answer to that. So it's looking at December/January. Another one, number one, a request to bring in the leadership meeting with the SRMP when Akwesasne Mohawk Casino issues forms from winning. They're issuing 1042S forms and should be issuing W2G forms of council. So that was completed. Hey, we just talked about that. All Canadian ID, any Canadian ID, they're required to issue the 1042S forms, but can apply to get funds back when they do their taxes. That's something they said they have to do, they have to issue those. Number two, if there be monies to access for business in the community that are for-profit economic development, it says it was completed. There's a small business grant and the Indigenous Initiative Fund, IIF, to ACTEL. So those are some good resources. Let's go into our general meeting Zoom questions. Is MCA holding the Hamilton Island leaseholders accountable for these violations? The answer is no. However, this is something that we're going to be talking about. This is something that is on our radar and we set as our priority, and there's going to be a lot of attention and time dedicated to this. So expect something from us. We're this one. Number two, when the membership portal going to be up and running? So we have answered the software teams are working on the technical issues. Hope to have this by the next general meeting. So number three, can issue building meeting document identifies the accomplishments of their work? It's completed, will be read aloud. It's gonna be read out loud? What? Oh, gee, stop. You reading it out loud?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. This will be read aloud.
So this is just an update from the nation building. They've been maintaining negotiations with Canada, for, in the Ohiarí, and we did negotiation preps, meetings which take place between council and technicians, establish the communications working group that has been going out, there's been some information passed out for the past few months now on their website, their Facebook site, their social media, along with MCA. They've established an implementation working group for the nation building group, community members and staff. Legal technical review subtable has been created. Land law working group has been created. Has hosted an enforcement symposium which happened in November 27th, 2024. Established a fiscal working group. The nation building team continues to make strong progress finalizing the ESCA, self-government agreement. Today, we completed 48 subject matters, finalized 21 chapters. We continue to actively negotiate the remaining 3 subject matters, including the fiscal relations chapter. The fiscal relationship agreement is also in development. Our internal team meets regularly to review, prepare, and respond to proposals supported by ongoing legal and technical review. We remain focused on completing the ESCA and preparing for community education and eventual ratification.
Now, Chief Scott, any questions?
Yeah, could you explain a little bit, Scott, on land law?
What I have available is the working group is responsible for drafting the Akwesasne land law, which will set out principles, basic rules, and administrative structures that apply to Akwesasne lands. The land law will address sections 18 to 41 of the Indian Act. These sections will no longer apply to the Mohawks of Akwesasne. The land law must be consistent with the self-government agreement. The working group has developed a working draft that is approximately 55% complete and is currently undergoing legal review. Drafting delays occur when ESCA provisions are still under negotiations or when previously agreed upon provisions are revised.
Now, does that control, that law control certificate of residence?
I think so. Under Indian Act, sections 18 to 41.
What good is that community building or self-government? You're gonna have a land law that's still basically under the Indian. You're not gonna release everything. Unless they give you the power to make decisions for the community. And law, and where, if you have a subject matter, where you're gonna argue about the law, or the decision made on a certificate of residence, what basically court can you go to argue that? No, you have an inherent right to court. But is that inherent right to court to hear the problems of the law? You make a land law, once you make a law, you have to have a discussion of court to do the law. You appeal it, or you want to argue it. So is this court here going to be the one in control of making decisions as far as the land law? Because everything starts with the land. We know we have 300
reports are shared and they're putting unproductive, so you're gonna see common, you're gonna see, it looks like they're copied because they keep the written reports and put them in there. The next question, is there current lobbying / political efforts in Bill 5 in Ontario and Bill C5 federally? So we hear some kind of strategy mentioned. That action item is going to get completed, update will be provided tonight, we're gonna be discussing that in a little while. And the last one, is there any kind of partnership going on with SRT regarding a court case filed by students? And we are supporting them through Arrow research and data. We did meet them yesterday on that, and they are putting an injunction. They're trying to put an injunction on that process with the FAFSA requiring that green card. So they're going to keep us updated, and they expect me to hear something at any point, but we're going to assist them as we go through. So now we can head on to our update. Action items are complete. We have updates. Bill C2, C5, and 5. Okay, council. Who has? Keisha? Okay, what is yours?
What's up, everyone? So we wanted to bring information on the impacts of Bill C2 on Akwesasne, so it's the Strong Borders Act. So the background is on June 3rd, 2025, the federal government introduced Bill C2's titled the Strong Borders Act in the House of Commons. This bill aims to increase Canada's border security and enforcement powers, including greater authority for the Canada Border Services Agency, a tighter immigration and refugee rules, expanded surveillance and digital data access, inspection powers over letters and parcels. While the legislation is framed as a public safety measure, it poses serious concerns for Indigenous peoples, especially our Akwesasne, as we are a cross-border community with distinct legal and cultural status. So implications for Akwesasne. Bill C2 could negatively impact Akwesasne in the following ways. So a cross-border movement, increased CBSA powers may lead to more stops, searches, and questioning of Akwesasne crossing the border. Canada still does not fully recognize the J Treaty, which protects Indigenous mobility rights. Privacy and surveillance. This bill allows warrantless access to digital subscriber data, raising concern about surveillance. Mail and deliveries. New rules could allow inspections of letters and packages, including ceremonial items. And then jurisdiction and governance. There was no consultation with First Nations, and this bill could conflict with self-governance practices. So our council's position and next steps. Mohawk Council of Akwesasne takes this matter seriously and is committed to protecting our people's rights and freedoms. We are taking the following action. We're seeking legal review, understanding the bill's impact on J Treaty, charter rights, and Indigenous jurisdiction, calling for consultation, demanding nation-to-nation dialogue before this bill advances, raising public awareness, informing the community through meetings and communication channels, and forming an advocacy strategy, so collaborating with other First Nations and legal bodies for amendments. So we'll still be monitoring this bill's progress and will report to the community with updates. So I just wanted to let you know, update you on this current bill, and we will keep updating on the progress as this goes. Now,
Keisha, C5.
I have a question on that J Treaty. The J Treaty back in the 60s, 68 I believe, was used in the Supreme Court of Canada. Went to the two lower courts and they hit the higher court. Supreme Court of Canada shut it down. So the J Treaty cannot be used in Canada because the J Treaty was never promised before Confederation. Canada Constitution 1867 did not include the J Treaty. So when they fought the border crossing here, they lost. The two lower courts were in favor, but when they got to the Supreme Court of Canada, it was shut down. So I'm just wondering, we spent $1 million trying to fight that time with the J Treaty. Is Canada, if you're going to fight the J Treaty, is Canada going to amend their decision and go positive on a new decision and say no, you can use the J Treaty? Because once it's shot down to the Supreme Court of Canada, you can't use it again. So I'm just concerned about where you're going to leave with the J Treaty.
So that's what, I just wanted to provide that information, and with your question, I think, sorry, I can't see you. So with legal counsel, with that question, we'll take that into consideration. Because I know our J Treaty is really important, and also our mission order for us in Akwesasne. So I just want to make sure that we are following the right steps, and we want to make sure that the community is aware of these bills that are coming forth.
I went to the J Treaty meeting and they brought this up. And I asked the same question, but they didn't answer. So I don't know if we're going to proceed, spend another $1 million trying to fight it. I don't know. I just had that question.
So I'm giving you an update on the impact of Bill 5 that was received for us and it was approved on June 5th, and then Bill C5 was received for us on June 26th. So I'm talking about its implications for Akwesasne. So one of the is jurisdiction. Akwesasne's jurisdiction, as we know, Ontario, Quebec, and New York State. Bill 5 in Ontario may impose regulatory or economic changes in Ontario, in the Ontario portion, without accounting for Mohawk Council of Akwesasne's governance or cross-border realities. Bill C5 can override Indigenous-led regulatory bodies via the national interest declarations. So both bills risk violating Section 35 of the Constitution Act and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, especially regarding free, prior, and informed consent (FPIC). Akwesasne's governance and customary law structures are not acknowledged in either bill. There is environmental oversight. Bill 5 weakens Ontario's environmental protection tools in special economic zones, which may affect Akwesasne's watersheds and land use. We worry there about our river. Bill C5 bypasses federal environmental assessments, potentially impacting Akwesasne's environmental jurisdiction, example through the Great Lakes region and Great Lakes related infrastructure. There is the customs and permission order. Bill C5's push for interprovincial consistency may contradict our Akwesasne resident permission order that we use to travel through CBSA and treaty-based practices that is accepted in the U.S. Harmonizing rules under a single Canadian economy could weaken MCA's cross-border recognition and rights to duty and tax exemptions. The governance of autonomy effect is both bills centralize decision-making to the Ontario Cabinet or federal ministers, while Akwesasne relies on community consultation, our law, and self-determination principles. These laws could undermine MCA authority if projects are approved without our consent. There is legal conflict risks. Akwesasne may need to assert constitutional protections through litigation if projects or policy shifts affect rights without consultation. Think of them expanding the seaway, for example. This includes risk of breach of MCA Canada relationship framework, the remission order, and Indigenous specific clauses of our Canadian Charter, Section 25 and 35. J Treaty considerations, cross-border movement, and economic rights under the J Treaty upheld by the U.S. courts may not be recognized or respected under federal trade, streamlining Bill C5, especially in customs tax contexts. Akwesasne may face loss of control over land and environmental decisions, weak consultation mechanisms despite clear obligations under domestic and international law. legal uncertainty regarding governance alignment, especially where federal and provincial authorities overlap within Akwesasne's own laws. Why does this all matter to Akwesasne? Our lands and water are at risk. These laws allow government to greenlight development without asking us, even in sensitive and cultural or environmental areas. They also ignore our right to say no. Both bills violate our constitutional rights under Section 35 and the international rights under Adjourn. We have the right to free, prior, and informed consent, not after the fact notifications. They threaten our ancestors. Ontario's Bill 5 allows developers to skip archaeological assessments, even if graves or sacred sites are present. That's a direct attack on our cultural integrity. They affect future generations, leaving behind polluted waters, lost medicines, destroyed heritage that cannot be replaced. We are responsible for defending our land for our children and their children. So our next steps can include reviewing legal options to challenge these laws, documenting sensitive heritage areas and burial sites, calling on Ontario and Canada to honor their duty to consult, including First Nations, collaborating with our Aboriginal Rights and Research, Akwesasne Rights and Research Office, nation building elders and youth to protect Mohawk history, lands, and waters, supporting advocacy against Bill 5 and Bill C5, making a public statement on our collective political stance as a community, continued and regular community updates and information sessions on all the bills that have potential impact to Akwesasne moving forward. Now,
Any questions?
Sorry, just a quick one. If you drive a gray Ford Expedition, it stopped beeping, but it might still be flashing Ontario plates. It's a gray Ford Expedition, Ontario plates.
Yeah, Vanessa, I just wanted to ask on that Bill C5, that, is there a budget breakdown in that? Like, let's say the Canadian government, Carney, moves forward, he wants a big project done. And you get to the people say no, and we're part of any decision making as far as the project goes. So is there a cut? Are they gonna give percentage of that budget to the indigenous people that, the project lays on? Like the First Nations, they call First Nations. Let's say you have a co-generating station that you're gonna put up. Part of the co-generating station, the budget for it. Is the Indians gonna be able to get part of that monies directly from the project? Because the only concern I have is that if they're gonna lay out a project, multi-million-dollar project, and the Indians get part of that budget for their land office, or to take care of the community, you're gonna have an awful lot of financial people. You're gonna have a lot of brains behind how you're gonna operate. You know what I mean? There's a lot of reserves up north that are still in farming. So I don't know what Bill C5 is asking. Are they asking just for consent? Are they asking to be part of the budget? What is it that they're really asking for in C5?
so with C5, Bill C5, there is no public expenditure that has been released. There's no cost estimate that is available currently. So that's one of the things that we need to look into as well.
I'm just concerned that, you know what I mean, that they will get consent, and yet they still rely on the government. You're gonna have a good team. If they give you part of that budget, $1 billion, if you get $100 million to operate, you get your cut of $100 million. They're gonna expect you to take care of your own people, your community. So you're gonna have a hell of a committee to take care of that. That's just my concern.
Thank you.
Vanessa, with the Bill C5, and for all of the council here, what strategies would you use to fight
Ottawa, there's a rally. We want community members to not only get involved, to understand what the ask is. Right now, we have a lot of youth that are doing rallies, and there's youth-led movements against Bill C-5 and Bill 5, and I think we could learn a lot from our youth community, as well as our elders when it comes to these.
And I think too, like, that's the way to get to them, is you don't want to use big words, you know, get your dictionaries and start using their big words and throw it right back at them.
Exactly, thank you.
Any other council want to respond? This side of the table? Well, just to add to that, I'm going to say that when we're looking at strategies, I mean, Bill 5 was set to pass, they passed it, they rushed it, and there was no stopping it. That's the reality. Now, we've gone to the summit, you know, talked with Carney, heard all of these things. Now, one thing that they're talking about is that they're going to have this native committee set up, and they're going to be consulted with, so they're going to be part of this process. Carney and them are saying that they're going to be consulting with First Nations, that Section 35 is not taken away. They're saying all of these things, right? But the reality is now they're going to be working on regulations. Now, is that actually going to happen? Those are things that we're going to be watching. That's what we're going to be advocating for. Who are these committees? All of these things going to proceed. The other piece to that too was that at Chiefs of Ontario meeting, they talked about all our First Nations people, you know, talking with whoever we do business with, our financials, you know, the banks, any of those businesses, and let them know that we don't support businesses that are going to go after those projects. So if there's a project out there, and we know it's, maybe it's a nuclear project, and we don't like that it's destroying the environment, then, you know, we tell our PDs, our BMOs, our CBS, we tell them, you know, we don't do business with those businesses that do that kind of stuff. So there's that kind of strategy in there too. We are looking at, you know, finding ways to make sure that we attack it from all angles. But again, we're going to keep everyone updated. This isn't over. I think the really big one we should be focusing on right now is C2. That's where we should be looking at. This one here, I'm really concerned about this one because, again, looking at accessing digital data, you know, what does that look like? You go through the border, can they look at your phones? Can they make you open it? All of those things, your laptops, everything like that. You know, it's going to get really tough and tight. Now, with that being said, we have a meeting, tentative meeting set with the Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations, maybe next Friday. If she cannot come down next Friday, then she'll be here in late September, October. And with that, we're going to be discussing our concerns with Bill C2. We're going to be discussing our concerns with the remission order that we currently have in place at the former Port of Entry. We're going to make sure it's not going to be impacted by that. And we're going to talk about our Quebec remission order that we're trying to establish as well. So we are being proactive. We're meeting with ministers. They're actually coming here. So if anything, we're giving them a whole tour and we're letting them see what it's like, but actually feel what it's like to live in Akwesasne so they understand those challenges. When we have them down, I think to the farthest in the slide, and I say, you know how far the corner hospital it is? Well, look at how many borders you guys take to get there. Look how far away it is. So we show them those realities of the borders, and that really has a big impact. So we do those kinds of things so that now, you know, they understand from our side and we're generating that support. But just know, if there's anything that you can do for yourself right now, I would say follow up on C2. If there's stuff that MCA posts, read it. If there's stuff in the media, read it. Get caught on C2 because we got to have some good thoughts on that. So that we can move on to our presentation. We have a presentation by Dr. Horn. Is Dr. Horn in the house? There she is. All right. Do we need a mic or anything up there for you?
Yeah.
We need to set her up.
Okay, so, I guess, since I don't have control of the, I'll have to tell you to change slides? Okay. Okay, so, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming here today. I'd like to speak to you
today about the relationship between the environmental pollution and health, particularly as it pertains to our community of Akwesasne, which is very appropriate since we were just talking about the new builds. So during this presentation, you will see paintings and images from our own people, our own artists, and over the years I've asked them permission to use their works for my slides. I didn't have her name, but this is from November. Whenever I do presentations, next slide please, I begin with the Ohiarihkó, and in these words we speak about the great relationships of all things, how nothing exists in isolation, and how we as humans are the stewards of all the relations that exist in the lands, waters, and air that we find ourselves in. We also describe how the waters and winds that will take harmful things away from us. But unfortunately here in Akwesasne, the waters and the winds are actually doing the opposite, and they are bringing man-made harmful things to us. And so that's what I'd like to speak to you about today. Next slide, please. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. My mother is from Mohawk, her name is Onerahtohkó, and we are Bear Clan. My father's name is Tom Cook. He's from here in Akwesasne, Cook Road to be exact, and he's Wolf Clan. I have 6 children, ages 19 to 30, of which 2 are stepchildren, and I worked as a family physician in the Ohiarí for 7 years and in Akwesasne for 10. Next slide, please. So before medical school, I did a master's degree in epidemiology and biostatistics, which is about doing research using the scientific method. And this method involves trying to answer questions by taking measurements from a whole lot of people, putting it all together, and coming up with results that describe relationships. So these are about populations. So research is about populations. So for example, if a study finds that PCBs are linked to diabetes, it means from a population point of view, there's a relationship between PCBs and that you may develop diabetes, but it doesn't mean on an individual basis that you will develop diabetes. The clinical and individual relationships are what we do in the clinic as health providers. So we use population or community-driven information to give context to an individual person's health. And so the difference between population and individual health measures are very important to understand what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So today I'd like to meet the following objectives. To describe why we're talking about this today, how industry has affected the health of our environment, emphasize the PCB pollution and its effects on our health, address current stressors, outline what the clinic is doing to address our concerns about individual health, and open a discussion about what our community can do to address our community health. Next slide, please. So there is tremendous change happening in the world right now. We see events south of the border affecting us, and right now, big industries are wanting to come up to this area and reuse the infrastructure that was left by the big companies that were here. But what about the pollution that was left in the soil and the water? Was it ever completely cleaned up? Are we at risk for more pollution exposure if the pollution gets disturbed? We all have family, friends, and neighbors that have been experiencing serious health issues, and many people hold suspicions that the poor health of our environment has something to do with this. Health is a very, very complicated issue, and like the Ohiarihkó, all of our organs work together in a perfect balance, and this balance is affected by our genetics, the stresses in our life, the choices we make, and yes, the health of the environment. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Lancet, which is an internationally recognized science publication, put out a review of the commercial determinants of health. Essentially, these articles describe how Western society uses a capitalist framework that prioritizes the rights of some over the rights of others. For instance, companies must make decisions. It is legally required for them to make decisions that will ensure that their shareholders will make money, even if those decisions are morally or ethically wrong and hurt people or contaminate the environment. And this is why governments must create laws to hold these companies in check. And that's why we're so worried, because the government right now is removing all of these protections, and now it's going to let these companies do what they would like to do. Next slide. So currently, Trump says that climate change is a hoax. Trump's administration is creating policies that both work to strengthen private companies and to weaken government environmental protections. Unfortunately, Canada is following a similar route. We cannot expect that our lands, waters, and air will be protected with the new laws being passed in Canada. We need to learn what the facts are. We need to learn how these changes will affect our surroundings, ourselves, and those faces that are yet unborn. Next slide. So now I'm going to do a little bit of a huge overview. So let's go way back. Our lands and our hunting lands extended to the lower boundaries of the Great Lakes to present-day Montreal, down to the Adirondacks, the Appalachians, and across to present Ohio. As we know, this vast area was central to the colonial events and early European settlements that early Canada and the United States had, and of course they were the early areas of the continent where industrialization happened. Next slide. A Superfund site is an industrial area that is so polluted that it's been deemed a threat to human health. In America, the federal and state governments mandate that these areas must be cleaned up. So this is a map of United States Superfund sites showing that New York State, New Jersey, and California, which are in orange, are the states with the highest numbers of Superfund sites. Or more precisely, these are the areas in the United States that are most polluted, right over the areas where we come from. Next slide, please. So the Superfund sites that we are most familiar with, of course, are the Reynolds site, the Alcoa site, the General Motors site, just upstream and downwind of Akwesasne. Of course, of note, they're just upstream and upwind. We're receiving their air and their water. Of note, the map shows that the Adirondack Mountains, the area of our traditional homelands, has no Superfund sites. Next slide, please. When I present this information outside of Akwesasne, I always describe the very unique jurisdictional complexities that we have to maneuver to live here. So this map of course shows the Kawehno and the islands in red, the Venabigal or St. Regis and Seskéha in green, and the St. Regis Mohawk tribe in yellow. So pollution doesn't respect boundaries. And so for the northern side of our community, we get a substantial amount of pollution from the water and the wind coming from the United States. Presently, we have to implore the American Environmental Protection Agency to hold their own companies accountable and to supervise and hold those companies accountable to their own environmental standards. We have no voice. And we know that, for instance, the site at Alcoa regularly exceeds the safety limits of their emissions. So we have a situation here. We don't have a voice to the incredible harms that are happening to our community. Next slide. The Onerahtohkó, or the Great River, or the St. Lawrence River, was remarkable for her incredible biodiversity. There are many islands and channels where the water runs fast or slow, and the depths that are shallow or deep, and there are marshes for birds and for all kinds of wildlife. And of course, there are so many types of fish, each with its own personality, and anglers would come from all over Turtle Island to fish, and our people would work as guides. We were active, we ate from our gardens, collected the sap from our trees, we had small farms where we milked cows, collected cream, we had special places to make medicines, swimming holes where the water had sulfur, which had healing properties, and we were completely self-sufficient. We were much healthier than we are today. Next slide. There was also a set of rapids which fell about 80 to 90 feet just upriver, and the sound of the water going over the rock sounded like a partridge quickly batting its wings, which is what Akwesasne means, the land where the partridge drums. In the mid-1950s, to collect the kinetic and the potential energy of these waters, Canada and the United States jointly worked to build the Moses Saunders Power Dam that runs from Barnhart Island to Cornwall, Ontario. At that same time, the Seaway Corporation, another joint venture between Canada and the United States, dredged the river and built this section of the St. Lawrence Seaway. Next slide. The Elder study was done to document the effects of bringing hydropower to the area. In the article by Marina Zacharis Johnson, a community member, entitled Akwesasne and the History of Hydropower, the opening quote reads, "This is not a story of triumphs of engineering over nature, nor is it a story of masterpiece of international diplomacy, nor even a story about change. It's rather a story about the intimate relationship that the Mohawks of Akwesasne had with the environment in which they lived from time immemorial, and how change was forced upon them through no choice of their own. It is the story of how the forces of outside government and corporate America seemingly conspired to break the identity of the Mohawk people in a manner that no residential school had ever successfully accomplished by changing the environment from which we live. Next slide. In Maclean's article from 1979, headline reads, "Island unfit for man or beast," referred to how within 5 years of the opening of the Reynolds aluminum plant, community farmers were noticing that their cows were getting sick, they were not gaining weight, they were having stillbirths, their teeth were falling out, they were getting weak, they couldn't walk. And they were told that it was their poor farming techniques that were the reasons for their animals getting sick. And it took 17 years for an unbiased veterinarian to come to the area, examine the cattle, and then he found very quickly that they had severe fluorine toxicity. Fluorine is a byproduct of the aluminum manufacturing, and it was raining down on our people, including the children attending Akwesasne Mohawk School. Importantly, in the settlement with Reynolds, the community settled for damages done to the animals, but not to the damage done to the health of the people. Keep this in mind, as this may be an avenue to explore in the future. Next slide. There were 6 large industries near Akwesasne, 3 on the Canadian and 3 on the American side. There have been many research studies that have been done that have concluded that Akwesasne is heavily polluted with things like digoxin, PCBs, lead, mercury, fluoride, aluminum, and many others. And that this pollution has profound negative effects on the health of the people. As a result, there are advisories in place limiting the amount of fish that can safely be eaten, about how we can grow our gardens in the soil, what type of soil that we use, and warning us of the hazards of keeping medicines in certain places in the community. Next slide. The effects on health are both direct and indirect. Indirectly, in one generation, our community lost its ability to fundamentally take care of ourselves. We no longer fish or grow our own food. The economies presently available are mostly related to waste management, the leasing of our islands to non-natives for vacation homes, and the selling of products that draw people to spend money in our communities: casinos, gas, cigarettes, cheap alcohol, and cannabis. And currently, we also have human smuggling and sex trafficking, underworld economies that are increasing with climate change-mediated migration and politics. Next slide, please. Akwesasne were very successful at bringing their environmental concerns to the national and international public. This is the Los Angeles Times in 1988, writing about the founding of Akwesasne turtles having PCB levels in the toxic range. And the first time that I heard about the environmental concerns of Akwesasne was at the American Indian Science and Engineering Society conference in San Jose, California in 1994, where a delegation of very vocal students from Akwesasne were there and persuasively describing the pollution of the community. I found their words to be impactful, compelling, and memorable, and you would be very proud to have seen them in action. Next slide. The first study in Akwesasne was done with a cohort that included Adjourn, a midwife, my auntie, who wanted to know if PCBs were found in mother's milk and if breastfeeding was still safe. There were many studies that were done documenting the very different chemicals in the environment, particularly PCBs, and different health outcomes. A few years ago, during the pandemic, my daughter actually read every single one of these published studies, these articles, and there are about 80 of them, and then summarized them into one big chart. Next slide. This here is a map of all the different groups of people that were studied in Akwesasne, and these were the people where the measurements were taken from to make all of these reports. So PCB exposure on a population level has been associated, not an individual, population level, has been associated with the development of cancers, autoimmune diseases, for example, lupus, scleroderma, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoporosis, autoimmune blood disorders, and hormone disorders like diabetes and thyroid problems, fertility issues, and neurological effects like developmental disorders and mental health disequilibrium and early dementia. Next slide. The research can be summarized by Adjourn, a community midwife, by the following quote: "By contaminating our food chain, including mother's milk, with toxic compounds such as PCBs, dioxin, DDT, and many others, corporate society has removed from us our very ability to feed ourselves, our families, and our communities. Exposure to toxic contaminants in the environment, air, water, local foods, soils, fish, wildlife, and mother's milk has resulted in a rapidly changing epidemiology among many Native people. Next slide. Children played in this toxic soup. They covered themselves with the oily slip. They pretended that they were mudmen, and they gave themselves facials, and they slid down the slippery grass into the water on natural water slides. They picked through the waves looking for treasures, ate the fish their fathers, uncles, and brothers caught, drank from the wells, ate the food from their gardens, picked medicines, and were breastfed. These children are now in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they've had children who are now in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Is it our imagination that so many people in this community are developing serious illnesses like cancers or liver failure or hormonal problems or mental health disorders? So I've been saying the word PCB quite a bit, and I'd like to take this moment to recognize that we should describe what these are. So PCBs are polychlorinated biphenyls, and this is a man-made group of chemicals that were used, for example, in the electrical transistors of factories, ensuring that the transistors do not overheat, blow up, cause fire, or damage. They are greasy substances known as forever chemicals because they don't easily break down in the environment. And they were made and marketed worldwide by a U.S. company called Monsanto. In the late 1970s, it was realized that PCBs could increase the risk of developing cancers, and so they were banned worldwide. But by then, they were everywhere in the environment, and today, humans continue to be exposed to PCBs in many ways. There are 3 points about PCB molecules. First, the basic components are 2 ring group of atoms with chlorine attached. Second, there are 209 different types of PCB molecules, and they differ based on how many chlorine atoms are attached and where they're attached. The more chlorine atoms that are attached, the heavier the molecule. And then third, each congener has a different 3D shape. For instance, if you have chlorine atoms attached in one area, you can have a flat shape, or in another area, it will be bent. And so removing chlorines will change the shape of that overall molecule and make it more or less recognizable to our bodies, and then change its toxicity. So a lighter PCB molecule, a changing PCB molecule, is not necessarily a safer PCB molecule. PCBs are part of a group of man-made chemicals. They're called persistent organic compounds, and these compounds are organic, meaning they have little flags on them that allow our bodies to recognize them. They are fat soluble, and they dissolve through the fatty tissues of our skin, the lungs, or our gut. That's how it gets into us. And once in the blood, they attach to proteins and travel to distant tissues in our bodies, and then there, based on their shape, like a lock and key, our body recognizes them as looking like something we need, and so they are brought in, and then they start to do the things that they do, like change hormones and activate hormones, or change the DNA, or they're stored in the fat protecting nerves, the brain, and organs like the liver. And of course, we can excrete it in our feces. Next slide. Monsanto sold mixtures of PCB molecules called Ohiarihkó. Each Ohiarihkó mixture has unique properties, a whole bunch of different ones mixed together. Some are thicker, some are thin, giving each a very specific industrial use. And the original PCBs in these mixtures are called legacy PCBs, older PCBs. These are the forever chemicals, and they are hard to break down. But over time, particularly during warm weather, and especially with specific bacteria, they will eat the chlorine atoms off and ultimately change that molecule. So here we see a table of chemical fingerprint of a mixture, and you'll see that there are all these different PCBs, and there are about 50 different PCB types that have been measured with the little lines. Now, if you measure all 209 congeners, it would be a very, very, very long horizontal line. So what they do, because that's very expensive, it costs about $1,500 every time you do it, they only measure a certain amount. And usually all they measure is the original parent, non-changed adult PCBs. And so, if they say, hey, PCB levels are going down, the question has to be, are you measuring all of them or just the original ones? because the original ones are going down because they're changing into daughter molecules that you are not paying attention to. Next slide. This article published this month describes an overview of everything I'm saying. It can be found at openaccessgovernment.org, and it describes how legacy PCBs were banned in the early 1980s because of their association with cancers, but they changed into new, lighter PCBs, called contemporary PCBs, and they are recognized to be neurotoxic. Neurotoxic means that it's toxic to our nerves. We've been spending a lot of time talking about cancers and autoimmune disorders and hormonal problems and fertility issues and all that, but we haven't really been talking about neurotoxicity. In 2019, Akwesasne did what is called a tree bark study. In this study, 56 trees were selected from areas all across Akwesasne, and they ranged in age from age 2 to 200 years. And their bark was measured for all the different congeners of PCB embedded in them. The results found a significant amount of contemporary or daughter molecule called PCB4, and this is an end product of the degradation and dechlorination process. And so what this shows is PCB4 is airborne. It means that today we are breathing in these PCB4 molecules. What does that mean for the health of our people? Next slide. PCBs pass into our bodies through our skin, our gut, and our lungs, and they go to the fatty tissues, and then they're stored. And they can be mobilized and cause lots of problems depending on their shape. They can pass through the placenta, and they can expose a developing baby. If PCB4 is in the air, it's neurotoxic, doesn't interfere with the normal brain development of our children, contributing to symptoms associated with autism and attention deficit disorder. Next slide. In 2006, researchers with the Akwesasne Task Force on the Environment released a paper looking at the relationship between PCBs and cognitive function in adolescents in Akwesasne. The relationship between PCB exposure on some measures of cognitive function were not large enough, but they were statistically significant. Another paper described that it was the non-coplanar congeners, the bent ones, that were affecting cognitive function. PCB4 is a bent-shaped PCB molecule, and bent-shaped affect the they affect neurological function by several means, including disrupting the hormone dopamine. We've all heard about the hormone dopamine. Dopamine is that feel-good, really happy hormone that people get in hits when they smoke cigarettes or they have fun, do good things and bad things. For instance, it's for mood, motivation, feelings of reward, being productive. That's where it's involved in. It's important for normal movement and balance, like Parkinson's disease. Low dopamine is associated with memory loss, low sex drive, poor digestion, poor cognition, depression, anxiety. And so dopamine dysregulation is also related to psychosis. And this cartoon shows how good dopamine is released when we have good experiences like being outdoors, working on goals and hobbies, rest, and having a good sleep and exercise. Dopamine is also released when we take drugs, binge watch television, drink alcohol, eat junk food, and are on social media or gamble. So how do we get our dopamine fix? How we get our dopamine fix is going to really affect our overall health. Next slide. So we're breathing in a changed form of PCB molecule that is airborne, it's bent, and it affects our neurological symptoms related to dopamine. But we're still being exposed to those old legacy PCBs that we knew are related to cancers and all the other things that we've known PCBs to be related to. We have increased hardening in our arteries. These are the type of things that we have related. So increased hardening in our arteries, which cause atherosclerosis, risk for heart attack and stroke, and vascular dementia, kidney disease, and diabetes. So older PCBs are stored in the liver, they cause inflammation, they cause a fatty liver, and over time that fatty liver scars and it causes non-alcoholic hepatic steatosis or fatty liver, and then eventually cirrhosis. So all the people who have cirrhosis do not necessarily have it because of their alcohol. They may have it because of the genetic problem and the environmental exposures. PCBs also increase the risk for liver cancer. Next page. Legacy PCBs increase the risk for the development of type 2 diabetes and autoimmune dysfunction. And autoimmune disease occurs because of long-standing inflammation where the body turns its immune system upon itself and destroys our own tissues, the connective tissues of our joints, our muscles, our skin. And so autoimmune diseases, and I'm going to say these because a lot of people have heard them and don't realize that this is a group of medical problems. So we have sarcoidosis, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, primary biliary cirrhosis, autoimmune thrombocytopenia, inflammatory bowel disease, Graves' disease, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, multiple sclerosis, Sjogren's disease, and type 1 diabetes. Next slide. They are related also to certain cancers. These are the older ones that we are still being exposed to. Notably, liver, bile duct, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and melanoma are the most common cancers. Less strong associations with PCVs have to do with the breast, the lung, pancreatic, testicular, prostate, colorectal, brain, stomach, and muscle cancers. And this is where we make the following very important points. PCVs increase the risk of getting these cancers, and that these risks are increased by other factors like our lifestyle choices and bad luck. So this is why we're working towards a comprehensive screening program at the clinic that will be nurse-led and easier to access, as well as working with both Ontario and Quebec to improve access to screening programs for all community members for different types of cancers. Next slide. The discussion about pollution in our environment and the health of our people comes up, particularly when we are reflecting at the end of life. In Akwesasne, we are unique in many ways. We have a long history of research in the environment and our health. Many community members are already aware of the pollution and how it's affecting us. We already have structures ensuring a respectful relationship with research, like codes of research ethics, and we have developed capacity in the community. We have so many intelligent, very, very smart, and active people of all ages, including the young that we were talking about, that need to be mobilized to try and figure out what we're going to do. Next slide. So today we have a new set of stressors. We need to look specifically at how capitalism and politics are affecting us. For instance, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, has a Superfund redevelopment program that aims to help communities reclaim and reuse formerly contaminated land. And their website describes each Superfund site as having potential to be pollinator habitats and playgrounds and solar arrays and commercial office space. So the General Motors site, located adjacent to Burkett Point, is listed as one such site that is actually actively looking to be redeveloped. But there are reasonable concerns that the site has not been sufficiently cleaned, and legacy and contemporary PCBs are continuing to be released into our environment. Next slide. The EPA would like to designate the entire General Motors site as having completed their cleanup, and this designation would allow them to move on to site redevelopment part of the phase. But because of these serious concerns about the entire cleanup not being complete, the community members who own lands that are just adjacent, they haven't been given permission for General Motors to continue. And that is a form of resistance, because we need the site to be evaluated to make sure that it is clean. Next slide. There are satellite and thermal images over the western part of Akwesasne that include Cornwall, Ontario. So we see Cornwall Island, and it's the bi-lobe area in the middle. And just south of that, you can see two areas that I have circled. And what this shows are areas that light up due to heat. And so what's interesting is that when we look at the General Motors site, when we're driving by, we can see grass and a few mounds. They've even put a lawnmower over it, I noticed. But look at it, lights up. Because it's active underneath it. There's stuff going on underneath that, and you can see it with infrared imaging. What's worrisome is that what that heat is doing is it is changing and deforming the PCBs that it's storing underground. And so now we have legacy PCBs and new ones like PCB4. And so we're very, very worried about any changes that are made to any old site without looking at the big picture, including the new daughter molecules that are hurting us and we don't even talk about it or know about it. So there's another concern regarding the ships that pass by the general motor site in the St. Lawrence River. As mentioned, the site consists of flat areas and mounds of sequesters, PCBs, and the land under the mounds is not lined. So rainwater coming from above and groundwater channels running horizontally from the Red Cat River to the St. Lawrence are moving PCBs attached to sediments. And the PCBs are also changing because there's bacteria in there that are naturally breaking them down. So now they are lighter, and it's happening faster because of the heat. And so what happens is when a boat goes by, it creates a huge depression in the water as it moves all that water in front of it. And then it causes a huge suction, bringing the water from the shoreline. And is anybody looking to see if that shoreline water is carrying PCBs into it, which are ultimately going downstream into our waterways? Next slide. What happens when older facilities that have incompletely complained of their pollution are revamping their infrastructure to attract new industries to the area? In 2019, a cryptocurrency facility moved to the former Alcoa site, and the computer algorithms that are calculating the cryptocurrency generates an incredible amount of heat, and it creates this dome of heat to the area, which is accelerating the breakdown of the PCBs in the soils. And then what they do is they take these huge fans and they put them onto these computer servers because they're so hot, and they want to move that heated air, and that heated air is physically being moved up over into our community, because 85% of the wind goes right into our community. So we don't know what the levels are 5 years after opening this plant, because when it opened, that's when we did the tree bark study. So what's happened since that study was done, and we've had the cryptocurrency? What's happening now? We can only imagine that it is higher because of the way that they take care of the air that is over that part of over their facility. So last year, this particular plant was given approval to dramatically increase the size of their factories. So these are things that we need to pay attention to. Next slide. So this poster was on my wall as a teenager that reads, "Only after the last tree has been cut down, only after the last river has been poisoned, only after the last fish has been caught, only then will you know that fine that money cannot be eaten." So what are we going to do? This is the topic of another discussion. But in terms of health and what can be done at the clinic, family medicine can be divided into 3 parts: preventive care, acute care, and chronic disease management. And this is how I'm going to finish off here. There are many parts to preventive care. For instance, taking care of ourselves, eating well, getting plenty of physical activity, having healthy social networks to support healthy habits are important. Controlling risk factors like blood pressure, cholesterol, your blood sugar are also important. Being vaccinated for infections for yourself and others, especially if you live around elders and people who have multiple medical issues, that's important. It also includes well baby visits and childhood checkups, and well women and well men checkups, and well elder checkups. At the clinic, we're working towards having a team approach where nurses can lead these visits, checking, doing initial evaluations and vitals, and making sure that you're caught up on all your regular screening, particularly for cancer. Next slide. We know that community members are frustrated because it's difficult to access care when they are sick. At the clinic, we're working towards using provincial protocols so that nurses can do more of the point-of-care testing and treatment. We have secured 2 more nurse practitioners who are doing extra walking clinics. We have patient navigators who are at the hospitals who can help you maneuver yourself through the system. We are getting new relationships with hospitals like Barrie Memorial and Glengarry, so we have other options if we have to go to the emergency room. We need families to encourage their youth also to think about going into the health field. Chronic disease management includes having your risk factors checked, making sure that you come in regularly. We're trying to have a team approach so that we can more efficiently provide chronic disease management. We're bringing specialists to the community who work at other hospitals to bring them here to help with our people who need this care and have trouble traveling. And also the Grand Q healthcare part is also a huge issue that we are actively working with. So we have a lack of all health professionals, and we have to be patient and look out to parts of our community to recruit them here. And so if you see new people that you don't recognize, they're coming here because we desperately need them to help with our healthcare. I'm going to finish off and say that this big problem here is something that's not really on the radar. But what I'd like to say is that it's going to take all of our minds. It's going to take our community love and our history and our knowledge mixed with the people who understand the science. And if you can bring them together, we can create a plan that is going to do what we want it to do. We have these incredible bills that we were talking about. Canada signed Bill S5, which is we all have a right to live in a healthy environment. That should supersede this Bill C5. They also passed Bill C226, which is a law that was created to address environmental racism and injustice. That's what we're talking about right here. So there are laws, but there are other laws that we have to be informed about and give it strength so that maybe it can change the narrative that's happening right now with regards to the health of our environment. Now,
Any questions from the floor?
yeah, oh, yes. So, what you just mentioned was, are we able to access that information from our electronic medical record? That is a really, really big question, and it's something that we have been unable to do, and we are actively trying to figure out how to do that. That is a problem that's across the board. The TRC in 2015 said, we need to figure out how to get health-specific, indigenous-specific data about their own health, because we're not reflected in any of the standards out there. And that means that we have to have these EMRs, the electronic medical records, actually identify this stuff. So we need to find capacity to be able to interrogate our EMR. And thus far, we haven't found that, but we have some really close ideas of how to do that. So your question is a very good one. It's identified across the board, and I really want to have this information because I do want to know exactly what are the levels here.
For the autoimmune system, is it affecting, or do you see it affecting both men and women, or more women?
It typically affects more women than men across the board, but we don't have that data here. I don't actually know. And the other thing too is there's a whole bunch of stuff happening south of the border that we don't actually know. So if somebody goes to the American side and goes and gets their health care, we have no information in our set. So one of the problems is that there's no communication between both sides.
Because this is a very important issue, which is affecting a lot of community members, will this become a priority issue that the Council, Department of Health will make to establish a team that will put together a team that will gather the required data? Will you begin to work collectively and collaboratively with the Church Mohawk tribe to help?
So that is why I said we need to have a huge community conversation. We need a massive conference, like at the Turtle Dome. And we need to everybody get the same information, and then we put all our minds together and come up with exactly what you're saying, a plan. We need to do this because it's happening outside and it's happening here, and we have new things happening. We all need the information. Yes, we are. I am, for sure. Everywhere I go, I teach across Canada, and I talk all the time about the effects of the environment and pollution on the health of our people. And it's generating a lot of discussion that wasn't necessarily there before.
So for the leadership, Grand Chief and Council, will you make this a priority?
Yeah, that's why she's here. We had this presentation a little while ago there, and when we looked at this, we knew we had to get this out. We knew we had to talk to the community, show you that, but also too, we want to come with solutions. And we want to set something up again. We're going to focus on research, putting money towards research in this so she can have her real data. We gave our commitment to that, like we're working together with that. The other thing is, how to get that data and that stuff, but we're going to back her up on that. But we also need to have the community engaged. Now, we need you to come out and support her work. We need you to come out and take those surveys. We need everyone to participate in this, so then the more data we have, the more accurate information we're going to have, right? And then we can strategize from that. So again, this is the first step to say, now that Dr. Horn and council and you, the community, are now connected, we have to make this a priority. It can't just be council, Grand Chief makes it a priority. It's the community has to make this a priority. So again, I'm going to spin it that way, say we all need to do this. And if we don't, if it's just going to be one of those things like, oh, Dr. Horn had a session one night and yeah, we planned to go, but we didn't go, and only 5 people show up, well, what kind of data is Dr. Horn going to have? What kind of data are we going to, how are we going to help our children? How are we going to help the ones coming behind us? So again, this is where we have to all work together. Council is supported, we're up into it, and we take this serious. We also want to hear creative solutions. We're talking about food sustainability, grow ops and shipping containers. We're looking at different ways we can make sure that we're all safe, our medicines. And this is not the last, this is only the beginning. Any other questions for Dr. Horn?
Hello. One of the things that I've been involved in environmental protection for a long time. But one of the things now that I'm concerned about is fires. Last year, I had a nice garden, and then the fires, the smoke from the fires came, and it started raining, and I didn't approach anybody against my soils, but my plants changed, and a lot of my herbs just turned white, and I realized that it's not actually what's in the ground anymore, it's what's stopping into the ground from the fires, and at one point, Green was on the radio saying everybody should stay indoors because of the fires from California that were carrying a lot of contaminants. So, it's our world, everything's changing, we have invasive species all over. So it seems as though this has to expand out from just PCBs. Like PCBs they're a whole other ballgame. And, we've had discussions and open meetings with Paul, General Motors, with EPA. And pretty much EPA is affected by the political world. And so they bow to General Motors and meetings and it's too bad. So I think, again, it's more a global look at the contaminants and what's happening in our communities.
Yes. I only talk about PCBs because it's the most prevalent one here, but I actually worked for several years as a researcher in Grassy Narrows, which is a community in northwestern Ontario that has been inundated with mercury toxicity, mercury poisoning that happened from a plant 200 miles away, and they have incredible neurological problems because of the mercury, and it's multi-generational. So I went up there as the doctor as part of this research project, and we did a lot of work up there. And so this is just what's happening here. But the general idea is that our environment is sick, and we have to find a voice. And how do we do that? We have to have data in a very smart way to be able to advocate for the things that we're saying. Part of the reason why we may not have been heard before is because we were not collecting data, because it costs so much money. So there's been a lot of work done from my point of view about this topic, but also what's happening across the board. And I'd love to talk to you about all the things that are happening in Canada. One of them is I'm on the board of directors of something called the happening right now because of Trump and because of Carney. So this has been a bigger discussion. It just so happens that right here we need to be aware of what we're breathing is actually damaging, and maybe this is going to help us try and get money to get data so we can help our children who are neurologically have deficiencies, who are having problems in school, who need care. Right now you can't get an ADHD assessment. It costs so much money. And so a lot of kids don't get the help that they need because we don't have the numbers, because we can't find the support, because we don't have the people to help in the classroom. Because. So it all starts with knowing what's going on and then coming up with a plan which includes data. And right now, PCBs is what I'm talking about, but the conversation is massive. And yeah, wildfires and all that other stuff, invasive species, yes, you're right.
Ms. Film. One of the things that, in my opinion, that would be excellent to implement is when people are suffering from non-alcoholic liver disease, if there's a mechanism, I know it's very costly, but the red flag could go up, and then that person could be tested for these various contaminants, because if they have it, then the children need, and it may have been in the past. And I know, I talked to Bev at the clinic, and she said they can't do that because it's so expensive. And I know, in Akwesasne and across Canada, that data-wise, when I was working with Health Canada, and I was working on medical reporting systems, I was told that we don't collect that, we don't keep it. And the reason, in my opinion, is because they don't want data out there to show what's really going on with our people.
That's right. Without data, our voice is really, really small, and so we just get rolled over. We need data to amplify our concerns.
I was wondering, some of the data that you have, if I come into the clinic and you diagnose me with any of these disorders that you're something references, as me personally, I gotta guess, I'm sharing with everybody. Are you using that type of information to connect it to this?
So that's the whole idea. So before medical school, yes, I did a degree in master's in epidemiology and biostatistics to look at all the population risk factors to see how it would change that person's clinical presentation. So I'm not going to check for PCBs because there's no blood test for that. But what I'm going to do is probably screen you 10 years earlier. I'm going to probably do more tests. I mean, there are tests that I do that are not even supposed to be done, but I'm like, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyways, like vitamin D. If your vitamin D is low, it's because it's a fat-soluble vitamin, you're not absorbing it, there's a problem with your biliary system, which is a problem with the liver. So as soon as I see a low vitamin D, I say, okay, there's a problem with the liver. And then I start looking. So yes, I do use it, because they're going to say, you're doing too many vitamin D tests, because we're not even supposed to do it. We're not even supposed to do thyroid tests. We want everybody. Like, I change the way that I practice because I know what's going on here. And that's why I teach the medical students at McGill and Queens. And it is something that is definitely not discussed and isn't reflected in any of the ways that we do medicine. I will say that I was at a lung cancer summit, and I talked about PCB4, and as a result, they put on making sure that before for lung cancer they said, oh, it's just so much that you smoke, and that's how you get a lung cancer screen. So after that discussion about what's happening here, they added it as one of the things to be prioritized as part of the tick boxes when we go get this special test. So it's happening slowly. I'll stop there.
So for somebody like me who has that type of disorder, or could be anybody, and then they have a child, and then all of a sudden they have some rare genetic disorder, is that something that would be, hey, maybe we should test because all these, babies are being born with crazy disorders, we never heard of
And so they're still coming up with different markers for different genes. Genes are like a whole, I remember when they had just come up with this like DNA, and and it's really, really changed over the past 45, 50 years since I've been in school and learned about it. And so yes, if we have if we're looking for something, then we should be working with people who are geneticists. That's with CHIO. And so that is a conversation that would be part of this big discussion that I want to have. Right now, we have just secured a very good relationship with CHIO, especially if you have round Q. There's all these things that are happening, and that is something, but we can't do it first. We have to do all this other stuff, and that's part of the strategic plan. If you wanted to go and have your child tested for a genetic problem, I don't know what that gene would be, but that would be for a geneticist, and that would be over at CHIO. And they have to increase their acknowledgement of this problem. So, I was going to ask my I have a friend who's a geneticist at the BC Children's Hospital, and she I did talk to her in detail about certain things, but not about autism and specific markers per se. So I don't actually know the answer to that. The most important thing that I will say is that PCB4 that I'm talking about, if you go and you do chat GTP, you're not going to find any information. This is very, very new, because about 15 years ago, the whole research community said, oh, no, we know everything to know about BCBs, we know it causes cancer, and let's go on to something else. And now they're doing PFAS and all this other stuff. The important thing, though, is that they stopped doing that research. And now here we are, 15 years later, and holy smokes, there's these daughter PCB molecules which are just as dangerous, causing a completely different other problem. And so this is new. And so yes, the medical geneticists who you would see haven't learned that yet. And the basic science, the basic research is being done right now, like at the University of Albany, where Dr. Carpenter, who was here doing the original studies, are actively working on to see what PCB molecules do specifically in our bodies.
Hello, Dr. Horn, how are you? I worked on categories you mentioned on the screen. I worked at those plants. I was a pipe fitter in Coro, a big plant in Colonial. They use this dump all the way stuff into the river. Foam, lots of foam. We used to work with that with our boats and just cake with foam. I worked at the paper mill for years at the paper mill, California mill. I was really responsible for the paper mill. I worked at two circles we had in I worked for several years at General Meeting at the plant. And I worked at Alcoa in that sludge we're talking about, where the hills are. It's all contaminated. So I'm just asking, being in those plants for many years, has the neurological damage been done?
Yes.
Because I noticed I'm the only one taking it here. I don't know, I'm blaming it on old age tremors.
But that's why I said Parkinson's disease.
Yeah.
Parkinsonian symptoms, one of my best friends is a neurologist, and we talk about this. Mercury PCBs, they're neurotoxic, and they will cause early dementia and nerve changes like Parkinson's disease. Yes. But like what I said, population data does not necessarily mean you're going to have it. There's bad luck, genetics, and the exposure. So maybe some of the other men who you work with have other problems. They're all gone. Right, they're gone. So the whole idea was not to terrify or scare you. It's very important to give a name to something that you have probably thought or discussed amongst your families and friends. And the point here is that this is not something that went away. We didn't just put our head in the sand. It's actually still here and it's changed. And so that's why I came here today to talk about this, because I want you to know that we have to go towards how to plan a strategic plan so that we don't get scared, so that we can figure out what to ask those geneticists when we send our children for an evaluation. How do we get those psychologists when we're asking them to evaluate our kids for learning problems? All this stuff. We need the data, we need a plan, and we can get help, but we just have to be very strategic. Thank you.
Yeah, Any other questions for, comments for Dr. Horn?
I just wanted to add on, whenever there was a question from the community that was asking about this being a priority for council and if we have a plan in place. So having this community discussion and information getting out to everybody to be proactive and to start making your health a priority and to get yourself checked out. There's other steps that are currently being taken with the programs of Mohawk Council, and that would be with the environment. Unfortunately, tonight was their first community engagement with their 60-day remediation action plan. So that was scheduled from 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock at the traveling college. With that, that was information and community session for fish tumors. So there's all these other things that we need to look at with the environmental impacts on our health. Whenever Dr. Horn discussed about assessments, this is something that we need to have rolling out, not just with our Department of Health, our DCSS, but this is also something within our schools. We need to ensure that our children are getting the proper treatment and they are being identified with services that they need and accommodations to ensure that they have a successful life. So there are many factors and many programs that we need to collaborate, and with this we need community to keep showing up, community to keep asking questions, and we have to come up proactive with this. This can't be something that you walk out the door today and not think about. Whenever you go home, talk to your family about this, let them know what's going on, let them know that there's PCB-free and it's in the air and we're breathing it in. It's in our homes, it's in our cars, and it's outside. We need to have awareness and we need to start thinking about our future or we won't have one. You know?
Now, let's hear from Dr. Horn. Okay, so we're looking at the time, we have 7:39. We have business from the floor, resolution, our announcements, and adjournments. Okay, so we'll take a couple of questions from the floor. Please make the most of your time. We're gonna go to about 7:55 and then we'll probably kind of wind things down by then, but we've got some time. So do we have any questions from the floor?
This one's online. First question is, how long are the current leases for lots on Hamilton Island? And can anything be done about making sure that once a lease expires, it is leased to a community member and not to a non-member?
Anyone on council want to take that?
Hi, with the lease agreements for,
Yeah, go
the current lease agreements, they're renewed in 3-year terms, so that way if there are any violations, it could be reviewed by council for, continuation. Yeah, it's 415, but every 3 years is a reassessment to ensure that the lease agreement is being abided by NAPDO.
I had a bunch of questions or comments, but I'm going to only ask two. And kind of in keeping with Dr. Horn's discussion, one of the things that I keep hearing is that we don't have enough healthcare workers. We don't have enough help, we're short-staffed or whatever. So I think a suggestion that I would like to make, we talk about solutions, right? Okay. We have a number of healthcare professionals who could step up in their skills, say from RPN to RN, or RN to nurse practitioner, or nurse practitioner to physician, or paramedic, who is kind of the equivalent of a nurse practitioner out in the field. So in the past, we had a program with the health department where an individual who was an
example, one was a nurse who went on to become a nurse practitioner, and we paid their salary, 2/3 of their salary. And unfortunately, when the person came back with the added skill level, requires additional salary. And the council of that time refused to increase that person's salary, so she got a job somewhere else. And so it has to be a whole comprehensive package when you look at the different health professions that are currently needed in the community, to include those who are already employed. How do we support them and their families while they're off getting additional training? And also, how do you do a financial package for these various professionals in your HR system? And what about new positions, like a dietitian or nutritionist or physical therapist, which is really sorely needed here, and all these other professions. So I just wanted to highlight that, because right now we are in a health crisis, and we need to somehow get ourselves out of it. I just had one other comment I'll make tonight, and then I'm done. Okay? I have 4, but I'm only going to put it out there. The second one is about the cutting of the side of the roads. Years ago, Sally Bennett came to council and said, would you please not cut the sides of the roads until the wildflowers are gone? And it always looks so pretty when you see all the wildflowers growing alongside the road. Then I noticed that they're starting to cut earlier, and the wildflowers are gone before they're done. So I'm hoping that council will reintroduce that policy that Sally put out there years ago when she was still alive, to just let them grow. When the flowers are dying or half died, then send your cutters out there to mow everything down, please.
Second, Chief and Council, what I'd like to bring up tonight is, we have all these health issues, but one issue that is common in our community is mental health, along with the drug-induced schizophrenia and other mental issues. I'm asking if it's possible to have assisted living homes built in Akwesasne for those who are living with these issues of mental health, who need assisted living with having their prescriptions given to them on a daily basis, to have their parents, their needs met, because they're unable to live in their homes with their families because of all the attention that they need to be given. Along with like hospice and palliative care, it's all along the same lines. It's just care and nurturing their people needs right now. So I'm just asking if you guys could look into something like that too.
Portfolio?
Yes, I think something that would be added on to our DIH discussion portfolio. Secretary.
So my name is Ohiarihkó, the whole crowd, council knows. I have an incident with Jordan's principals, and I wanted just to make you fully aware of what exactly is happening. Okay, my son, we have to apply for his ABA, IBI therapy, his clinical director, his speech pathologist, and his dietitian. Okay, I applied to Jordan's principals for that. I jumped through hoops for these people, and now it's getting sent to a review team. However, when I did send my application in, they called me and required asked these following things. I will read you the letter that I sent to the lady where I felt it was really discerning on what she did, okay? So her name is Valerie Lopez Utosta. She's a junior program officer, program delivery for Jordan's Principals, Ontario region. So I say, my subject is concerns regarding barriers to assessing Jordan's Principal support in Ontario. Say about Valerie, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to raise an important concern that has come to my attention, one that is increasingly affecting families like mine who rely on Jordan's Principal in Ontario. I have observed a troubling trend where intake officers are requesting detailed information about whether families have applied for provincial support such as OAP, which is Ontario Autism Program, assistance for children with severe disabilities, ACSD, and disability tax credit, DTC, and his child tax benefit. While these questions are technically optional, the tone and language used often imply that eligibility for Jordan's Principal may be impacted if provincial supports are in place. And she even asked, where do I work? What is my salary? How much does he get from OAP, ACSD, DTC, and the child benefit? They asked me all these personal questions. To me, that was discerning. This practice is deeply concerning. Indigenous families in Ontario depend on Jordan's Principals to address unmet needs, service gaps, and to access culturally appropriate care. The implication that accessing provincial support could jeopardize eligibility for Jordan's Principals is discouraging families from seeking the full range of services available to them. No family should feel forced to choose OAP and Jordan's Principals. Equally troubling is the increasing requirement for multiple letters of support from medical professions during the intake process. These letters often come at a cost to families with no reimbursement from First Nations communities or Jordan's Principal. This creates a significant financial burden, especially for families in remote areas where access to pediatricians and specialists are limited. Even in urban areas, long wait lists and out-of-pocket expenses for assessments and documentation are common. These requirements delay care and place undue stress on families already navigating complex systems, which I've been doing for 13 years. These practices induce unnecessary barriers and contribute to inequities in service access. Jordan's Principals was established to ensure First Nations children receive the supports they need without delay, jurisdictional confusion, or systematic obstacles. Families should not be penalized based on geographical financial capacity or their ability to secure costly documentation. I remain committed to advocating alongside families to ensure that supports are accessible, equitable, and truly in the best interest of the child. I welcome the opportunity to discuss this further and invite you to share your own experiences and insights. So, I sent this to her, and instead of responding by email, this lady calls me. You know why she called me instead of responding by email? Exactly. She is lady's covering her ass. Covering her ass. So, I know where she is. She's in Ottawa. Guess what this chick is doing? She's going to Ottawa tomorrow. National Review Committee is in Ottawa. This application is going to the National Review Committee. There's no decision. It'll sit at the National Review Committee. I have 2 applications sitting at the National Review Committee for 2.5 years. 2.5 years. And now they're going to send this one to them. This bill is $135,000. Do I take out another loan to cover my child? No, I run to Mohawk, so let's go to special needs. Policy's all screwed up. Let's rewrite it. Okay, I can't apply anywhere now because MCA's policy needs to be rewritten. So what do? My child has not had services in over a month, you're starting to regress. This is where I am. I wanted to let everybody know, because this does not only affect me, it affects everybody. All your children, all your grandchildren, all your great-great-grandchildren. It affects everybody. Oh yeah, they took care of the hockey parents. That's why Jordan's principles is messing us up, is because all First Nations communities took advantage of it and didn't read policies and procedures. But let's hire somebody that doesn't know nothing about it. When you have life experience, I think that should matter before your education, before your financial. People didn't know. Okay? So that's where I am. I'm $365,000 in debt. In debt because of these services. I can't get another loan for 120, 135. That's all I'm asking. Help a little bit quicker. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Vaughn, thank you. So I have a question about housing, because I know that none of this probably returned my email. So I would like a housing update. And I would also like to know, what is council willing to propose a 15-mile radius like the tribe offers? Is that something that we can do? Because there's a lot of community members that do live off the territory that cannot come here and get services. I applied for services. I was told to go back to Cornwall. I was told to go back to the tribe. I live in Cornwall because I have to. I have no other housing. I applied for the MCA donation fund. I was told I was a non-resident, that I was white. So what are we doing? I also want to know about the update on the housing law, because I know that a chief's child lost their home and got into a KRA apartment. Now what's the wait time for apartments? How did she beat everybody else on there? Because I know I've been on that list. How did she get in there? And it has nothing to do with her. It's transparency and it's accountability. What is council doing about the housing crisis? As you know, today is July 31st, everybody on council. Today is my last day in my house in Cornwall. Where do I got to go? And the chief who has it, has this issue, is a portfolio holder, so let's just put that in place. I'd like answers from housing portfolio holders, please.
Today on housing, we did discuss we did discuss concerns about emergency housing. There's a strategic plan that is currently being worked on, so we can ensure that we have adequate housing for our community members. It's not going to be something that's overnight, but it's definitely something where we can improve. And this would be looking, working hand in hand with what's happening to see what is available to purchase in the community. Another part of your question would be the request for a radius. Council did discuss the different barriers that are in place with that donation policy and request for AHAC parameters, which is the boundaries of Cornwall, be enacted on that policy, so that way support is not being discarded for the people who need it. Anything else on that?
Yeah, the update on the housing, like that person jumped to the top of the line, I don't know.
That I do not know. I just got a portfolio 2 months ago. Sorry.
Who else is housing portfolio holders?
I am, but I don't know, I can't answer your question because I don't know either.
I don't think it's your child.
Pardon?
I don't think it was your child. Who else is housing?
You asked for a portfolio, I'm on it.
appreciate that. I didn't do anything as a housing portfolio to get my daughter in. My daughter lost her house. They ran out of the house that night with barely anything on their clothes, on their bodies.
And I'm not talking about her situation, I'm saying, if we have.
I had nothing to do with it, it just worked out that way.
Yeah, you know what, guys? This is the kind of stuff that says, we're allowed to talk, but we gotta be respectful. And I'm stopping it right here. I've had enough of this. We gotta talk, let's talk just normal with respect. Now, with that being said, we're gonna be.
It doesn't come here to tell you guys your job, they come here to tell you guys your complaints, so you guys can fix it.
Yeah, no, here's the thing. Yes, but you also have to have respect for the rules. I mean, that's just how it is. So with that being said, we're gonna move on. We're gonna close this discussion on the floor.
You don't answer it, always, I will never ask for the spreadsheet.
Hi, Taylor, I've been in contact with you. They did spur changes again, we've been trying and we've asked every time for updates on, sorry that, we were trying, but we brought it right every time that you have emailed and we communicated, I sent it to everybody and it's been at that table. And we all agree that any services that we have, it's all good like that. I didn't know about that donation because we can do that and it really bothers me. And I brought it right to the table and I said, no, it's not anybody's fault that they live over there because they can't.
The donation fund and the special needs fund, which I can't apply to because of the policies
I
in
thought
place.
we that followed that they had as well, because I thought it was supposed to be part of that change with the new policy that came in. And we did ask that the donation policy come forward with that change. And I said, any service that we offer here, we need to offer it and follow that same AHAP to avoid confusion.
That's why I was asking for that raise, is that something that we can put in, because if we have to reside in,
Right.
which is fine, is that eligible for us to tap into?
Yeah, we did pass it over to administration, they bring that forward so we can vote on it, so that everybody is treated the same. Were you denied the special needs?
Was I denied? My address is 1205 Osborne, Kawehno, you think I've been denied?
No, you shouldn't be, because
It says
we
on
passed an
the
MCA.
application, it says go in over, or not to go, just sign it.
So if you do apply, it shouldn't be an issue, because it follows the same rules as AHAP, and it also will even take into consideration outside that boundaries depending on sites and needs. So I would highly suggest that you apply for it, because it should not be an issue.
Because the Adjourn principal is backlog, and I need a $2,700 car seat for the open child. I don't know if it's going to down, like, so what I need to, if I'm getting declined from other programs, then I'm gonna get declined from this, so I mean, I can try to apply, but we'll see what happens.
If you do, if you want to just even put through the application, I can even submit it for you and you can follow it along that way. Yeah, so I'll follow up with you on the special needs policy.
Okay, 8 o'clock. We're moving on. We have a resolution here to accept and approve the attached general meeting minutes dated Onerahtohkó, May 29, 2005. Do we have a mover? Joanne, do we have a second? Discussion? Discussion?
I have a question on that. For the May 29th, general meeting council minutes, has it been updated to reflect Grand Chief Leonard Lazar and not Grand Chief Asian Leonard?
According to policy, when there's error, we cannot accept that, so let's move on to the next one. Come on, Leonard. To accept and approve the attached general meeting minutes dated Ohiarihkó, June 26, 2025. Do we have a mover? Sarah, do we have a second? Joanne, discussion? Question and call. All in favor, please raise your hand. For show, 10-4, 0 against carried. Okay. Looking at announcements, we have our district meetings August 11th. Our general meeting is August 28th. That's it for announcements. And number 10, adjournment. Can we have someone do a closing, please? Driver, do a closing.
You got heads up! You gonna listen to your community or what? Why are you moving on?
Because according
They
to
weren't
the
finished.
ticket,
We're
closes at
finished.
8.
Close the line and answer the questions.
It's 2 minutes left. You have time.
It's already 8:02. It's over.
I'll take a lot. Motion carry on. Everybody raise your hand. There you go.
Isn't part of being a member of Kawehno that you're entitled, no matter, let's say where you reside, you're entitled to money that the community is receiving. So why are people that don't necessarily live in on the border not eligible for money that everyone is entitled? If it's part of the membership, that's one of your rights as a member. So wouldn't that supersede any of the policies or procedures or applications?
I have an issue. Banner. Thank you. I have an issue I want to bring up. I brought paperwork in front of you for the meeting. It's on resolutions.
Okay, well, show of hands. Who wants to stay? We can go till 8:30. Can someone call that? I can't.
Go till it's done.
Well, so can you look around and count to see if there's majority, please? What?
32 yeses.
32 yeses? Out of how many?
Probably about 40.
Majority?
Does the membership code supersede anything that comes after that? As far as money or funding? Anybody, I mean,
I've been saying that, we just not being honest.
I mean, they say that, it's like, she's really article home, so, Kayla's my first cousin, and hear that, it's really upset that she's article home and not eligible for funding as a member, is entitled to it.
That's why we asked for the policy to come forward.
Well, why would the policy need to be changed if the fundamental part of being a member is you're eligible for the money?
Because the funding comes for territory, I'm assuming.
But you're a member, it says right in there, you're eligible for anything, money-wise.
That's the same with the tribe, right? Like it goes both ways. That's what I've always said since I got in. Was that nobody should be left without. There should be nobody that needs for anything. And all of Akwesasne, because they collect money for.
I mean, I'm sure you use your numbers to get funding, right? I mean, it just, doesn't make sense that she's being denied from all these programs for something she's clearly written that she's eligible.
But she didn't apply for the program, so maybe she should go and try. Because if she shouldn't be denied, she's a member. But you gotta go and put the application in. And then with the special needs, balance that you work with her.
I did put in an application. You want me to read the application for Christy Mohawk?
That's the donation policy.
Well, if I'm told one time that I'm a non-resident, what else am I supposed to do?
We should keep applying to all the programs. And balance that will help you with the special needs.
And then I had a separate question, September 30th, 2024, a community member who was a mother as well, passed away in a facility that she was residing in that was run by MCA. Was that ever investigated to see how it happened, or policies followed? What are the circumstances? Was anybody held accountable for that?
administrative.
It's not
That's,
sold.
well, yeah, no, but that stuff is being looked into, but it's administrative because of the legal stuff, some stuff can't be talked about. So it's got stuff right there. It's got legal piece now, but things are being looked at. Let's go ahead.
Okay, I know everybody's tired of me bringing up this certificate of possession. But that's, a lot of land is messed up. There's people that come to me, and we talk, and we talk, and we talk. I dug up 4 resolutions that was passed. The first one I have is 31 years ago. The council passed resolution 9495, where they recommend that the council hereby establishes the Mohawk Council of Land Tribunal, and authority authorizes this tribunal to decide land dispute issues. That was 31 years ago. And 30 years ago, it passed another council resolution. In 1995, it passed another one. Now therefore be resolved that the Akwesasne Mohawk Court is given jurisdiction to resolve any issue or dispute concerning land within the territory of Akwesasne. They're demanding it, that's in 1995. 2003. Hold on. If you see the other one, 2003, resolution 2003-4, number 167, 22 years ago, it formed a committee. You have your papers? Look at the 2003 on top. And it says the Akwesasne Court will take the roster of 15 community members trained in the fine mediation process to resolve land dispute situations. That's the third one. That was 22 years ago. Now 18 years ago they passed another resolution, 2007, 2008, number 113. 18 years ago. Therefore be resolved that the charter of the Akwesasne Land Dispute Tribunal attached hereto is accepted by council. You got all these resolutions, there's a long standing between them because the problems never went away. No council in the last 31 years has got any solution at all to fix these land disputes. Now some of these chiefs on here, some of these chiefs are past and some are still around. We can't seem to get an answer. Everybody's, not only that, the 2007 resolution, when it was passed, it was a land dispute tribunal. It's not called a land tribunal, it's a land dispute tribunal. And in that dispute tribunal of 2007, the resolution passed. One part of the stipulates in here to receive, review, investigate, or cause to be investigated and hear disputes or complaints regarding ownership or possession of land. All the authority is with their resolutions. And then if you look at that other page I gave you, it came from the regional director on behalf of the Minister of Indian Affairs. The Mohawk Council of Akwesasne has acquired delegated land management authority under the RLEMP and as such is responsible for managing their land, all decisions, and allot individual possession of reserved land. Right now, you're supposed to have a land tribunal, dispute tribunal. You got the authority by the Honorable Mark Miller, written by Ann Scott, the Regional Director of Indian Affairs. She's saying that you guys are responsible for fixing all the land problems and have the committee, a tribunal set up so they can bring their issues and show if there's a mistake or error. The last part of that page I gave you part of the Indian Act, section 26 and 27, where it can be looked at and they cancel any certificate of possession that is in the opinion was issued through fraud or error. Everything's laid out as far as resolution. There is no tribunal. 31 years ago, how long is your term? How long is the chief's term? 4 years? 3 years? Well, look at how many years, how many councils we've gone through, 31 years. And no one steps up. We need that tribunal. We need to be heard. We need to start hearing the people. They have proof. They have documents. They want to show. In this mediation process you have right now, is you go to the court, and if the other side don't show up, you got to pay $35. If the other side don't show up, then you lose the $35 and it's not heard. That's not a tribunal. That's not mediation. That is total bullshit. So what needs to be done, I think, is take into consideration, read these resolutions. The resolutions don't mean anything. Why do you pass them? The Indian Act gives you authority. That's how you change the name of the reserve, is through a resolution. They're powerful. You're an Indian Act government. And it's powerful. Those resolutions satisfies Canada. So if there's resolutions passed by chief and council, you need to look into building a tribunal and start hearing these land disputes.
To that remark, I just want to say that as of now, the land sectoral agreement, the land dispute tribunal is on hold until the land sectoral agreement is completed through negotiations.
It'll never be done. Scott, it'll never happen. Plus, that land sectorial agreement that you're talking about, the nation building. The nation building for 17 years. I'm talking resolution 31 years. Another one 30 years ago. This has gone way before your sectorial agreement. And your sectorial agreement will not work for self-government because you cannot have land disputes. How are you going to move forward with a land code when you have 250 land disputes? You can't leave the people fighting for themselves. They have to fight the government. And here you're going to sign a self-government agreement, land sectorial agreement, and have a land code. We look like big shots. But yet you're leaving so many people. That's why people live in Cornwall. There's no land. There's families right now that are fighting. We got about 1,000 acres of land tied up in disputes. On the Mohawk, it's the same thing. They were telling me they had over 1,000 acres all tied up because of the same problem. This is a system Canada built. Canada loves no more than to see people and families split and fight. That's exactly how they designed it. And if we don't spark up and start doing our own thing, we're not going to get anywhere. I wouldn't rely on no sectorial agreement. 17 years we've been in this nation building process. And it hasn't got us anywhere.
Well, Dave, can I comment a little bit? You bring this to my attention when I first got on council. So I looked into it and I heard, and it was determined that the tribunal didn't have no authority to make those decisions. So we went back to mediation. And there's some certain situations in these land disputes where some individuals have the right documentation versus other family members. And it's only with other family members that they've got a conflict when the documentation is being held, and the other person that has the document don't deem it as a dispute, but it becomes one because more family members get involved. And now with this sectorial agreement that Chief Scott just mentioned, it's going to give us authority to address these matters. But some of these matters that you're mentioning that go way back is a result of INAC and the way it does things. I'm also aware of another area that is under a dispute with family members. With this, we assigned and cut up the land and gave it to other family members, and there was already family members sitting on those lands. Yet we go into land claims and we try and get a land claim, we have to settle with money, we barely get any land back because we cannot displace people that are already sitting on those land claim areas. But yet, INAC can come here and not even visit these public areas and cut up the land and re-give it to other people, and there's other family members that are settled on those lands. So this is a big issue. I understand. We're very passionate about this, but it needs to be addressed at the appropriate people, and we have to do it as a group moving forward. If we sit here and talk and keep fighting, we're never going to resolve this. And it's a long time coming. And lands are real personal issues with Ohiarihkó people. You know this. That's why these disputes are the way they are. And whenever people move away from the territory, that a long time ago used to have tried to expel them, that they're no longer have any holdings or rights here. And then when they come back, IMAC turns around and gives them, their grandkids, their great-grandkids, partial interest to these lands. And meanwhile, the other family members that never left the territory are sitting on those lands, which know they're in a dispute. So how can you blame council for all that interaction and all those things, the history of land disputes in Akwesasne? When IMAC, when the Indian Act was forced down our throat, this is what they did to us. There's a lot of things that impacted us with the IMAC. And that nation building is trying to fix it so that we get control and we get the authority always out of it. And another scenario is two individuals go to court and they try to get it resolved through the court because mediation didn't work. And then after it's done, there's a decision rendered. Then the community members don't even accept that decision and they want to go to the outside courts. So where do we win? We're all in this together, so we've got to come up with a good, solid, sit-down, hash this out. This document that he showed us today, you're expecting us to respond to it. We just now received it. So let us review this, and we'll have a chance to get together, and we'll talk about things, and we'll talk about case scenarios. We'll sit down in the nation building, see how much weight the sectorial agreement has. And then we can start moving forward on enforcement and actually sitting down and selling some of these issues. But we're not going to do it alone. This has to sit at this table. We have to show them the evidence that they created some of these disputes, and it's their responsibility to fix it. And if some people don't get what they want, well, then that is the department should be responsible for paying out those people, is because they didn't get nothing because of what they created.
Yeah, but you know what? We're giving you the same answer that you've given me. How many times have you been on council? 3 times?
You know how long.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. And what's happening is.
Well, hold on. This is a new council here. You're pointing a finger at me. When you said this was 31 years old, I wasn't on council for 31 years.
No, you're not listening to me. 31 years ago when this issue was brought up, the main problem with the goddamn reserve in Canada is the certificate of possession. I said a long time ago, if you let the families finish their own mediation before any certificate, a whole examining board before the certificate of possession sends to Canada. Once it's in Canada, they process what you send it. So we said a long time ago, don't send any paperwork until the family's satisfied. We said this a long time ago.
But you see too, also, wills can also be contested when one person is not happy with the will, the way it's being held up, and then it creates a conflict.
Well, the conflict, the will, everything, nothing moves, no certificate of possession should be changed until the conflict, everything is settled. What happens is the certificate of possession is filled out by someone, and it takes the act of Congress to break them. They ignore it. It says fraud and error. They're not going to admit to fraud and error. So you wind up with a big family dispute because the timeline's not there. It should be a committee, tribunal, where everybody on the family agrees for any transfer.
I understand, but sometimes there's wills. What you're talking about is when there's no will. Well, when there's a will, that will needs to be honored and respected because that's the wishes of the person that passed away.
Wills can be challenged.
That's what I just said. I agree with you. I'm not arguing with you. But like you said, you shared this document. I think we need to put together some type of plan, review everything, and then go from there.
I'd like something in writing
Some of these
council.
some of these errors were created by administration, and this is where it needs to go. And we have to look at all the documentation and then come up with a result.
Guys, you're going to start getting people bids that are going to start coming to you. I'm sick and tired of sitting on 20, 30 acres of land and nobody get on it. They're going to start coming, they're calling, they're going to want to come, they want some committee bill so we can show their issues.
I understand, and that's what people need to understand, is when they put lands in conflict, nobody can develop it until the conflict is resolved. So it's better to resolve it before we declare conflict.
Never have a separate agreement.
I have two questions online. The first one is, can anything be done about making sure that once a lease expires, it is leased to a community member and not to a non-member?
Yeah, these cottages, when they come up for sale, Akwesasne has the first right for refusal. What's happening is, we let these leases get away from us, they're not cottages anymore, they're pretty elaborate homes. So whenever something comes to the market and it has $475,000 on it, so we have community members that actually have the affordability to sell those leases and buy those homes. So that's the challenge we have. Anybody can own one of those leases, providing they have to buy out the individual that's sitting on it at the moment.
All right, and I have another question. Now go over your continued dedication to our community. From the last general meeting, has council had the opportunity to review the concerns regarding breaches of confidentiality about why and who AMPS officers are on leave? I believe it's important to respect the confidentiality of these individuals. Additionally, is council concerned with the number of officers leaving AMPS for employment at other police services? I'll go over your attention to these important issues.
Personal information that is, I'm going to say that an administrative thing that's ongoing right now. But of course, we are concerned with what seems to be some members of the AMPS, not fleeing, but taking other positions with other police programs, departments, as well as area for that part. But we're doing what we can to retain. It's not easy anywhere. There are changes that need to be made, perhaps. We're doing our best to work with them on it.
I have a question for all of council. I was at a place this morning and there was two parties and there was another party involved. Is it true that council is making a decision on moving the post office to Smile? No.
As of right now, there is no plan to move, as far as I'm aware.
Again, we're on fixing the post office, as I mentioned already.
Here's that update. The IEG did send the guys there and moved everything that they asked for, and they are going to be getting quotes for us. Thank you very much.
I wanted to ask about properties off territory. So council is not able to purchase anything in farm, correct? They can purchase. Okay. So if we're having such a housing crisis here, and we have hundreds of people on the waiting list, why is council not investing in Kawehno or in the outskirts of Kawehno to buy acreage? The reasons why I'm bringing it up is that I think this is a more simple solution. Obviously, there's additional risks like taxes and stuff like that. Well, if it's an area where we can do the addition to reserve application, I think that's what we need to start doing, because we do not have the land here now, and there's so many people suffering, right? Like the lady that was speaking back here, right? We should have our own affordable housing off territory where those applications are put in for addition to reserve. A part of the FNCFS one, I found farmland and property that I applied for one of the programs in the hopes that departments can utilize this for cultural development, hunting, and farming and stuff like that. That is something I would love for council to be spearheading as well, is that we really need to expand our territory and we can start doing this. There's hundreds and hundreds of acres available out there, and we have money Akwesasne for Hamilton Island. Pretty nice place, pretty expensive, but we're hearing petitions coming in, and community members talking about the love and the services of it. So I think that will be a perfect space for one of these programs. I commented earlier on MCA's page suggesting that that building could be purchased to create another culture camp. So we can expand on our services, related to land-based activities and culture and wellness for the community. Right? Well, separating that could be a place for respite care. That could be a place for like the petition that was handed in earlier, right? So would you consider something like that? And so how quickly can you make that decision and get that to the community?
I think that's worth talking.
I think that is what really something that we could look into for a possible result, if we don't have to build it, it's already there, we just need to convert it for that thought.
Maybe say, well, I have a question with respect to the construction of those cottages, whether it's Hamilton Island, Stanley Island, Hunting Island, wherever. How does council ensure that they're not constructing anything that is very elaborate, that when they're wanting to move, that there's a price tag of $500,000? And who does the actual appraisal to say, yeah, that's what that value is, taking out of the equation that it's on an island on the St. Lawrence River? How much would that house be in the city of Cornwall or somewhere else? I don't think that people should be able to construct those types of dwellings when it's supposed to be a cottage, seasonal. You know?
That's something we're trying to control now with ODS. Whenever there's a intent of renovation or add-on to happen, the request comes to ODS, we sit down, we review it, and we determine whether we approve it or not. There was one individual that proceeded to build, he said he was gonna build a new foundation. There's no basement, just repair the foundation he had. And then when we got reports back, we went to the full-fledged cellar, half a cellar even. So we went over there, we visited with him, we wanted to terminate his lease, but he violated his lease. Well, we're handicapped like this, and we would end up in court somewhere. So what we did in the meantime was, to get all our ducks in order, we froze construction on his facility. And then he came to us later on, I gotta heat this half a basement all winter, you're not letting me finish. He cried about how much it's gonna cost him there, and we said, we don't care. You know, my guy, what we said in the standard, we said at the very beginning. So we don't care, I don't care if that foundation cracks, because we don't abide by what we said we were gonna do at the very beginning. Eventually, after we sent people over there, looked at everything, and said it's not as bad as we thought, so we let him continue to finish his building because he was compliant with everything we were doing now. There was also another individual there that was creating environmental violations by running his sewage sludge into the river. We found upon that, and we went there and investigated, environment was there, compliance was there, conservation was there, and again, we wanted to terminate this lease, and we couldn't, because it was violating and it was creating damage to the environment and also to the air. So again, we're handicapped like this. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to protect our land so it's there. And I also was on the ground at one time, I questioned why are we renewing these people with an opportunity to not deny them from renewal because of the infractions they've created in the past. We need to keep that record of all those infractions they've done. So that way we got the grounds. We terminate, we're not renewing the lease, and then we move forward to the next steps, meaning give them 90 days to remove the building. If they can't move the building, in 90 days it becomes ours. So So those are discussions that are being had. I can't disclose too much more because it's still in the preliminary stages of discussion and we're still collecting the data of all these infractions that are occurring on the now.
Vince, what does this, why are they able to?
Because they are in charge of our leases. It's just like your lien agents, like Mahoney's, the lien agent determines what Indian lands can be used and to what purpose. When we go to use those lands a long time ago, we weren't allowed to do what we needed to do on those lands. But the Gilosavas always, they were always in favor of the Gilosavas coming on territory and doing whatever they did. No, you guys all know that history. Now. Not that old.
Okay, it's 8:35, we're over the time. If you just want to continue, please raise your hand. We'll have to keep doing another count. Okay, 10 out of 47, that means we're going to close. We're going to come back to our closing discussion from the floor. We're coming back to our MCR. Joanne, you still move this MCR for May 29th, 2025. Fallon, you still second it. Discussion. All in favor, please raise your hand. Carried. Okay, we'll do our closing. We have a motion to adjourn. Alan, second. Scott, all in favor? Discussion. Carried. We're adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.